Before this story begins, make sure you're subscribed, because this love story, it doesn't just break hearts, it changes them forever.
The city never truly slept. At night, its lights burned brighter than the stars, as if the darkness itself refused to win. Skyscrapers stood like silent kings, watching over streets filled with secrets, money, and fear. In this city, power was not shared, it was taken. And there was one name everyone knew, but no one dared to speak too loudly. Adrian Kwan. A man who owned half the city on paper, and the other half in silence. Businesses bowed to him. Criminals feared him. Even the police chose when not to look in his direction. They said he had no heart. But that was not true. Because somewhere inside the coldest empire, behind the strongest walls, there was something Adrian never showed the world. A weakness. A memory he could not erase. And tonight, without warning, that weakness was about to wake up again. The doors of the black limousine opened without a sound. A cold wind moved through the empty street, as if even the air was afraid to stay still. Adrian Kwan stepped out first. Tall, controlled, unshakable. His presence didn't ask for attention. It took it. He was a rare mix of Korean discipline and African strength. His features sharp, his expression unreadable. Every movement he made looked planned, precise, and dangerous in a quiet way. Behind him, 6 bodyguards exited the vehicles, forming a silent line. No one spoke loudly here, not when he was around. A man standing nearby whispered without looking at him. That's him. The moment Adrian walked forward, the entire atmosphere changed. The streetlights felt dimmer, the sounds farther away. One of his bodyguards leaned slightly closer. "Boss, the board meeting is ready. The business leaders are waiting." Adrian didn't respond immediately. He adjusted his cufflinks slowly, as if time.
That's him. The moment Adrian walked forward, the entire atmosphere changed. The streetlights felt dimmer, the sounds farther away. One of his bodyguards leaned slightly closer. "Boss, the board meeting is ready. The business leaders are waiting." Adrian didn't respond immediately. He adjusted his cufflinks slowly, as if time itself had to wait for him. Then, in a low, calm voice, he said, "Let them wait." 2 words. That was all it took to silence everything. They entered the glass tower, his empire's headquarters. Inside, executives stood up instantly. Nervous smiles. Stiff posture. Sweat on expensive suits. A man tried to speak first. "Mr. Kwan, we were just discussing the expansion in." Adrian raised one hand slightly. The room froze. He walked to the head of the table and sat down, not rushing, not caring about the tension he created. His eyes scanned every face like he was reading their worth in seconds. "You all talk too much," he said quietly. Silence followed. A younger executive swallowed hard. "We are only trying to protect the company's future." Adrian leaned back slightly. "My company does not need protection," he replied. "It needs obedience." No one answered. Because everyone knew the truth. Adrian Kwan didn't just run a company. He controlled underground syndicates that moved like shadows through cities, unseen, unstoppable. Deals happened only if he allowed them. Wars ended only when he decided. But power came with a cost. And Adrian had paid it long ago. A betrayal. A woman he once trusted. Since that day, something inside him had changed. He no longer smiled. He no longer cared. He only moved forward. After the meeting, as everyone left quickly, one bodyguard stayed behind. "Boss, you've been working non-stop for weeks. You should rest." Adrian stood near the glass window, looking down at the glowing city below. Rest. A word that no longer belonged to him. "I don't rest," he said quietly. "I survive." The bodyguard hesitated. "People fear you, sir." For the first time, Adrian's reflection in the glass seemed heavier. "They should," he replied. Then, after a pause, almost too soft to hear. "But fear is all I have left." Outside, the city kept moving. Cars. Lights. Noise. Life continued. But inside Adrian Kwan's world, everything had already stopped a long time ago. Morning in Layla's world didn't begin with silence or power. It began with sunlight slipping through thin curtains, and the soft sound of her mother calling from the kitchen. "Layla, wake up, you'll be late again." Layla smiled before she even opened her eyes. "I'm up, Mama," she replied, her voice light, almost playful. Her home was small. The paint on the walls had faded over time, and the furniture didn't match, but it was filled with something rare. Warmth. Layla stepped into the kitchen, tying her hair into a loose braid. Her younger brother sat at the table, half asleep over his breakfast. "You're going to miss your bus," she teased, placing a piece of bread in front of him. He groaned. "You say that every day." "And every day, you almost do," she laughed. Her mother watched them quietly, a gentle smile on her face. "Eat properly, both of you," she said. "Life doesn't slow down for anyone." Layla nodded. She knew that better than most. After a quick breakfast, she grabbed her worn-out bag and stepped outside into the busy street. The city was already alive, cars honking, people rushing, voices blending into one endless noise. But unlike others, Layla didn't rush with frustration. She moved with purpose. Her destination was a small bookstore cafe tucked between two tall buildings. It wasn't grand or luxurious, but it was hers in a way that mattered. As she entered, the familiar bell rang softly. "Good morning," she called out. Her coworker smiled. "You're late again." "Only by 5 minutes," Layla said, laughing as she tied on her apron. She spent her day serving coffee, arranging books, and helping customers find stories they didn't know they needed. Sometimes, she would pause and read a line or two, her eyes lighting up with quiet joy. A customer once asked her, "Why do you always look so happy?" Layla thought for a moment before answering. "Because I choose to be," she said simply. It wasn't that her life was easy. There were bills to pay. Dreams she couldn't afford. Nights when she worried about the future. But she didn't let it break her. Because Layla believed in small happiness. A kind word. A shared laugh. A peaceful moment with a book. Things money couldn't buy. As the evening came, she stood outside the cafe, watching the city lights turn on one by one. She didn't know that somewhere in that same city, a man who had everything she didn't, was missing everything she had. And very soon, their worlds were about to collide. The ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers, filled with laughter, expensive perfume, and quiet power. Men in tailored suits spoke in low voices. Women in elegant gowns moved like art. It was a world Layla had never belonged to. She stood near the entrance, adjusting the simple emerald dress her coworker had insisted she borrow. Her hands felt slightly cold. "Just deliver the books and leave," she whispered to herself. The charity gala had requested a special vintage collection from the bookstore. Layla was only here to deliver them, nothing more. Meanwhile, across the room, the doors opened. And everything shifted. Adrian Kwan entered. The music didn't stop, the people didn't freeze, but somehow, the energy changed. Conversation softened. Eyes turned. Power walked in. His bodyguard stayed back. He didn't need them here. Adrian moved forward, calm, distant, untouched by the luxury around him. Until he saw her. Layla. Standing awkwardly near a table, holding a stack of books too tightly, as if she might disappear if she let go. She didn't belong. And that's exactly why he couldn't look away. One glance, and his world stopped moving. For a moment, the noise faded. The laughter, the music, the flashing cameras, gone. Only her. Layla felt it too. A strange pull. She looked up, and met his eyes. Dark. Deep. Unreadable. It made her heart skip in a way she didn't understand. She quickly looked away, whispering under her breath, "Why is he staring like that?" Adrian stepped closer without realizing it. Not fast. Not obvious. But intentional. When he finally stood in front of her, Layla nearly dropped the books. Sorry," she said quickly. "I was just delivering these for the event." Her voice was soft, real. No fake charm. No fear. Adrian studied her face carefully. "You don't belong here," he said. The word sounded cold, but his tone wasn't. Layla blinked, slightly surprised. "I was about to say the same about myself," she replied. Honestly. For a second. Adrian almost smiled. A dangerous, unfamiliar feeling brushed against his chest. "What's your name?" he asked. "Layla," she said. "And yours?" There was a brief pause. As if the world waited for her reaction. "Adrian." No title. No power. Just his name. She nodded simply. "Nice to meet you, Adrian." No shock. No recognition. No fear. And for the first time in years, Adrian Kwan felt something shift inside him. Something alive. Something he thought he had lost forever. Across the crowded ballroom, surrounded by power and control, a simple girl had just walked into his world. And unknowingly, changed it. The ballroom was still alive with soft music and quiet luxury, but for Adrian, everything had narrowed down to one direction. Layla. She had moved away after their first short exchange, returning to the table where she was placing the donated books. She worked carefully, neatly, as if she truly belonged to her small task, not the grand world around her. Adrian watched her without hiding it anymore. A bodyguard stepped closer and whispered, "Sir, the donors are waiting for you." Adrian didn't respond. His attention was elsewhere. Then it happened. Layla turned quickly, trying to carry the remaining books toward a display table. Someone from the crowd accidentally bumped into her shoulder. The stack slipped from her arms. Books scattered across the polished floor. "Oh no," she gasped. Before she could bend down, another guest stepped back without noticing, nearly stepping on them. Adrian moved. Fast. Quiet. He reached the books before anyone else and crouched down, picking them up one by one. Layla blinked in surprise. "You don't have to do that," she said quickly. "I can handle it." "I see that," Adrian replied calmly, still collecting the books. There was no arrogance in his voice. Just observation. When their hands brushed while reaching for the same book, Layla paused for a second. Then she smiled politely. "Thanks. I guess this is what I get for walking too fast in a place like this." Adrian looked up at her. Most people here would have been embarrassed, nervous, or trying to impress him. But she wasn't. She simply dusted off a book and said, "Are you okay? You look like you don't enjoy these events much." A question. Not fear. Not respect. Just curiosity. Adrian stood slowly. I don't enjoy most things, he answered honestly. Layla nodded like that made perfect sense. That sounds exhausting. That made him pause. No one ever said that to him. Ever. She handed him one of the books she had picked up. Their fingers touched again. Brief, accidental. But neither pulled away immediately. You really don't know who I am, do you? Adrian asked, studying her face. Layla tilted her head. Should I? A faint silence passed between them. And then, something unexpected happened. The corners of Adrian's lips lifted. Not a full smile. Just a slight one. But for him, it was rare. Almost impossible. She didn't know he ruled cities, and that made her special. Layla noticed the change but didn't understand it. You're less intimidating when you smile, she said casually. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. I wasn't trying to be intimidating. That might be the problem, she replied softly, then turned back toward her work. Anyway, thanks for helping. She walked away like nothing unusual had happened. No hesitation. No fear. Just normal life continuing. Adrian remained still for a moment, watching her leave. For the first time in a long time. He wasn't thinking about power. Or control. Or fear. He was thinking about her voice. And why someone like her made silence in his world feel different. The evening after the gala felt strangely calm. Too calm. Layla walked home through the city streets, still thinking about the strange man from the event, Adrian. There was something about him she couldn't explain. Cold, yet strangely gentle in moments. But she told herself it meant nothing. Just another rich guest at a charity event. Until morning came. And everything broke. Her phone kept buzzing non-stop. Layla, turn on the news, her coworker shouted over the call. It's everywhere. Confused, she switched on the television in her small room. The screen showed flashing cameras. A familiar face. Adrian Kwan. But this time, he wasn't just standing quietly at a gala. He was surrounded by reporters, bodyguards, black cars, and flashing lights. The atmosphere was aggressive, tense. A journalist shouted, Mr. Kwan. Is it true your company has ties with underground syndicates? Another voice followed, are you involved in Mafia operations across 3 countries? The cameras zoomed in on his expression, calm, unshaken, dangerous. Layla froze. No, she whispered. The reporter continued, people say you control both legal empires and illegal networks. What do you say to that? Adrian's voice came through the speakers, low and controlled. I don't answer rumors. But that wasn't a denial. That was silence wrapped in authority. Layla stepped closer to the screen. Her heartbeat grew louder. Clips started playing, images of armored vehicles, secret meetings, powerful businessmen bowing their heads as Adrian passed. Police escorts. Foreign headlines calling him the Shadow King of global power. Her hands started shaking. This was not just a businessman. This was something far bigger. Far darker. Her mind flashed back to their conversation. You don't belong here. The way he said it. He didn't mean the gala. He meant his world. A sudden knock on her door made her jump. She hesitated, then opened it slightly. A man in a suit stood outside. Miss Layla, he asked politely. Yes. He handed her a sealed envelope. For you. From Mr. Kwan. Her breath caught. She didn't open it immediately. Instead, she closed the door and slowly sat down. Her fingers trembled as she finally broke the seal. Inside was a short note. You were never meant to see this part of me. Her eyes widened. The words felt heavier than paper. She whispered, what are you? Her thoughts scattered. The soft smile. The quiet voice. The strange calm he carried. It all made sense now. And yet, it terrified her. Because she realized the truth too late. He wasn't just a man, he was a dangerous empire. And she had looked into his world, without knowing the cost. The city felt colder after the truth was revealed. Layla couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the news again, armored cars, powerful men bowing, the name Adrian Kwan written like a warning across every screen. A man she had spoken to without fear, was not safe. He was dangerous. And worse, he had hidden it. The next evening, Adrian came to her workplace. He didn't enter the cafe. He stood outside, watching through the glass. Layla noticed him immediately. Her heart tightened. She stepped outside, arms crossed tightly. "Why are you here?" Adrian's expression was calm, but his eyes were different now, distant, guarded. "I told you to stay away from the news," he said. Layla let out a small, bitter laugh. "You think that's the problem?" Silence. A heavy one. She looked at him closely. "Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" Adrian didn't answer right away. Because the truth was complicated. Because the truth would only pull her deeper into danger. "I had my reasons," he said finally. "That's what people say when they want to control others," Layla replied softly, hurt in her voice. His jaw tightened slightly. "That world isn't safe for you. And you decide that for me?" she snapped, emotion breaking through. "You think I'm too weak to know the truth?" "No," he said firmly. "I think you're too important to lose." That sentence froze her. For a second, something softened in her eyes. But it faded quickly. Because love without honesty feels like a cage. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you stay near me, people will come for you. They will use you to get to me." Layla shook her head slowly. "So what? You push me away instead? Without trust? Without truth?" "I'm protecting you," he said. But to her, it didn't feel like protection. It felt like rejection. Like she was something disposable. Something he could remove when things got dangerous. Her voice cracked. "Then maybe I shouldn't be here at all." Adrian's eyes darkened slightly. "Layla." But she stepped back. "Don't. Just one word. Final." She looked at him one last time, trying to hold on to the memory of the man she met at the gala. Not the empire. Not the fear. Just him. But it was already slipping away. "I can't live in a world where I don't know what's real," she whispered. Then she turned. And walked away. Adrian didn't follow. He stood still. Because following her would mean pulling her into darkness. And for the first time in his life, he chose silence over desire. But silence is what broke them. Sometimes love breaks, not because of hate, but silence. 2 years didn't heal everything. It only taught people how to live with the pain. Layla stood behind the counter of a small bookstore cafe in a quieter part of the city. It was nothing like the luxury world she once stepped into. No chandeliers. No expensive suits. No dangerous silence behind polite smiles. Just books, coffee, and simple people trying to get through their days. She tied her hair back gently and smiled at a customer. "Here's your order," she said softly. The customer smiled back. "You always look so calm." Layla hesitated for a second, then replied. "I learned how to be." But her eyes didn't always match her words. Because calm was not the same as healed. Sometimes, it was just controlled pain. That night, after closing the cafe, she sat alone near her small apartment window. Rain tapped softly against the glass. In her hand, she held an old news clipping she never threw away. A picture of Adrian Kwan. Still powerful. Still untouchable. Still surrounded by a world she didn't belong to. She whispered quietly. "I wonder if you ever think about me." Then she shook her head, as if trying to erase the thought. But she couldn't. Because some memories don't fade. They just learn to stay silent. Across the city, Adrian Kwan stood at the top floor of a towering glass empire. The world below looked smaller than ever. More controlled. More afraid. He was even more powerful now. New territories. New alliances. New enemies who never dared to show their faces. But inside him, nothing had changed. A glass of untouched whiskey sat beside him. His assistant spoke carefully. "Mr. Kwan, the merger is complete. The entire board is waiting for your approval." Adrian didn't look away from the window. "Approve it," he said flatly. "Yes, sir." The assistant hesitated before leaving. "And, the security reports." Adrian finally turned slightly. "Nothing matters," he said quietly. Then corrected himself under his breath. "Nothing new." When the room emptied, he stayed alone. The city lights reflected in his eyes, but didn't reach his heart. For a brief moment, he pulled out an old file. A single name inside it. Layla. He didn't open it. Just stared. Then closed it again. Slowly. Carefully. Like touching something fragile that might break him. Somewhere in the distance, life continued. She lived. He ruled. But neither moved on. Because some endings are not endings at all. They are pauses that never finish. And in that silence, only one truth remained. Time moved on, but their hearts didn't. The city had changed in 2 years. New buildings. New empires. New names rising and falling in silence. But some things never changed. The weight of memory. The event was one of the biggest business gatherings of the year. A high-profile charity investment summit where billionaires, politicians, and global CEOs gathered under one roof. And Layla didn't want to be there. But her company needed representation. So she came. Wearing a simple dark blue dress, she stood quietly beside her supervisor, holding a folder tightly in her hands. She felt out of place again. Just like before. But this time, she was stronger. Or at least, she tried to be. Across the grand hall, doors opened. And the atmosphere shifted instantly. Adrian Kwan entered. No announcement was needed. Power walked in before he did. Every conversation slowed. Every glance followed him. He was colder now. More controlled. More dangerous in silence. 2 years had sharpened him into something the world feared even more. He didn't look around. He didn't need to. But something deep inside him stopped. A feeling. Familiar. Impossible. Layla turned slightly to adjust her folder. And froze. Because she felt it too. That pressure in the air. That strange pull she had never been able to explain. Slowly, she looked up. And the world disappeared. Adrian stood across the hall. Still. Watching her. For a moment, everything stopped. No sound. No movement. Just 2 people standing in a crowd that suddenly didn't exist. Layla's breath caught. "No," she whispered under her breath. But her body already knew the truth. Adrian's expression didn't change. But something inside him cracked open. After 2 years of silence. She was here. He walked toward her. Slow. Measured. Each step heavier than the last. Layla didn't move. She couldn't. Her heart was racing like it remembered something her mind tried to forget. When he finally stood in front of her, the distance between them felt unreal. Too close. Too far. Neither spoke at first. Then Adrian said quietly, "You're here." Not a question. A truth. Layla swallowed hard. "I didn't expect to see you," she replied softly. A pause. Then Adrian's eyes lowered slightly. "Neither did I." Silence again. But this time, it was different. Not empty. Full. Of everything they never said. Everything they buried. Everything they lost. Layla finally looked up at him fully. "You look the same," she said. Adrian almost smiled. Almost. "And you don't." That line hit harder than either of them expected. Because it was true. They had both changed. But something between them hadn't. A reporter called his name from across the hall. Bodyguards moved closer. But Adrian didn't turn. Not yet. Not when she was standing right there. Because after 2 years of distance, silence, and pain, fate had done something neither of them could escape. It brought them back into the same moment again. And neither was ready. Adrian finally spoke, voice lower now. "You shouldn't be here." Layla's eyes softened slightly, but her voice stayed steady. "Neither should you." A faint pause. Then something unspoken passed between them again. Like a wound reopening. Like time folding in on itself. And in that crowded hall full of power and noise, only one truth remained clear. Some people are not lost, just delayed by destiny. The noise of the summit faded behind heavy doors. Somewhere far away, people were still talking, negotiating, smiling for cameras. But in this quiet hallway, nothing else existed. Only Adrian and Layla. They had walked away from the crowd without speaking. Now they stood in a narrow corridor lit by soft golden lights, the silence between them heavier than words. Layla finally broke it. "Why did you really push me away?" she asked, voice steady but fragile underneath. Adrian didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened slightly. Because the truth was not easy. Because it still hurt him too. "I told you already," he said quietly. "It wasn't safe." Layla shook her head. "That's not the truth." A pause. Then she stepped closer. "You don't push someone away like that, if it's just about safety." Her eyes searched his face. "You pushed me away like I meant something." That hit him. Harder than anything before. Adrian looked away for a moment, as if gathering every broken part of himself. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. "I did." Silence. Layla's breath caught slightly. Adrian continued, slower now. "My world doesn't spare people like you. It destroys them. Everyone close to me gets dragged into it, and they don't come out the same." He looked at her then. For the first time in a long time, no mask. Just truth. "I couldn't let that happen to you." Layla's voice cracked slightly. "So you decided for me?" Adrian stepped closer, tension rising in his voice now. "I decided to keep you alive." A beat. Then he said it again, softer this time. "I left you, to keep you alive." Those words hung in the air like a wound reopening. Layla turned away slightly, trying to steady her breathing. "I didn't need saving," she whispered. Adrian's eyes darkened. "You don't understand what they do. The people I deal with." "I understand enough," she interrupted. Her voice shook now. "I understood when I saw your world on the news. I understand. When I realized you lied by silence." A painful pause. Then she looked at him again. "And I still stayed." Adrian froze. That was the moment neither of them could ignore. Layla's voice softened, breaking completely now. I left, but not because I stopped feeling anything. She swallowed hard. I left because I couldn't breathe in a world where I didn't know if you were real, or just a shadow I imagined. Silence. Adrian's expression changed slightly. Something raw surfaced behind his eyes. What are you saying? He asked quietly. Layla hesitated. Then finally. I never stopped loving you. The words didn't echo. They collapsed the space between them. Adrian didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there like the world had shifted under his feet. For someone who controlled cities, he suddenly couldn't control a single breath. The hallway felt smaller. Quieter. Too real. Adrian's voice came out almost broken. Even after everything. Layla nodded slightly. Yes. A long silence followed. Then Adrian finally looked at her fully. Not as an empire. Not as a Mafia heir. But as a man who had been silently drowning for years. And for the first time. He didn't know how to let her go again. Because some truths don't heal. They reopen everything. And this one did both of them. The confrontation between Adrian and Layla had not ended with words. It had only paused. Because in Adrian's world, peace never lasted long. It happened 2 nights after the summit. Layla was walking back to her temporary hotel after work-related meetings. The streets were quieter than usual, lights reflecting softly on wet pavement. She kept thinking about Adrian's words. I left you, to keep you alive. And her own confession. I never stopped loving you. Each step felt heavier than the last. She didn't notice the black van slowing down behind her. Not until it stopped. The door opened. 3 men stepped out. Tattoos. Dark coats. Cold eyes. Not random criminals. Professionals. One of them smirked. So this is her, he said. Layla froze. Wrong time, wrong place, another muttered. She took a step back. What do you want? The first man laughed. We don't want you. A pause. We want him. Before she could react, one of them grabbed her arm. At that exact moment. Somewhere across the city. Adrian's phone rang. One word flashed on the screen. Layla. His expression changed instantly. Cold. Sharp. Dangerous. Where is she? He asked without hesitation. A pause on the other end. Then a location. And chaos followed. Back on the street, Layla struggled. Let me go, she shouted. But the grip tightened. Quiet, the man snapped. You're coming with us. Suddenly. A sound. A car screeching. Brakes burning rubber. The van doors slammed open. And Adrian stepped out. The air changed. Even the men froze for a second. Because they recognized him. Adrian Kwan, one whispered. His voice was low when he spoke. Take your hands off her. No emotion. Just death wrapped in calm words. The man holding Layla hesitated. I said. Adrian moved. Fast. Precise. One strike. The man dropped instantly. Chaos exploded. Layla stumbled back as Adrian fought through them like a storm. Not reckless. Controlled. But furious. Each movement was calculated, and deadly. One of the attackers pulled a weapon. Don't come closer. Adrian didn't even blink. Do it, he said coldly. A shot rang out. But Adrian had already moved. The attacker fell before he could fire again. Silence returned slowly. Only broken breathing remained. Layla stood frozen, her hands shaking. Adrian turned to her immediately. No hesitation. No distance. He grabbed her shoulders gently, checking her face. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. But her voice trembled. "You came." Adrian stared at her for a moment. Something in him broke again. "You think I wouldn't?" A pause. Then softer. "I told you once. I would burn everything if they touched you." Sirens echoed in the distance. Adrian didn't move away. Didn't let go. For the first time in years. He wasn't thinking like an empire. Not like a ruler. Not like a Mafia heir. Just a man holding the only thing that still mattered. He looked at the fallen man, then back at her. And in a quiet voice, he said. For the first time, he chose love over power. The night after the attack felt different. Not peaceful, but honest. The city lights outside Adrian's private penthouse shimmered like distant memories, no longer important, no longer loud. Inside, silence wrapped around them. Layla sat near the window, holding a warm cup of tea she wasn't drinking. Her hand still carried the memory of shaking, of fear, but also of something else. Relief. Because this time, he came. Adrian stood behind her for a long moment, watching her without speaking. For once, there was no empire between them. No lies. No distance. Just two people who had survived too much. Finally, he spoke. "They won't come again," he said quietly. Layla didn't turn immediately. "I'm not scared of them anymore," she replied softly. A pause. Then she added. "I was scared of losing you." That sentence changed the air between them. Adrian stepped closer. Slow. Careful. As if afraid she might disappear again. "You shouldn't have to live like this," he said. Layla finally turned toward him. "And you shouldn't have to carry everything alone." Silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they had never said. Everything they had survived. Adrian looked at her for a long time. Then, in a lower voice, he said. "I tried to stay away from you." A faint, painful smile touched Layla's lips. "I know." He shook his head slightly. "I failed." A breath. Then honesty, raw and unguarded. "I don't know how to exist in a world where you're not in it." Layla's eyes softened. "And I don't know how to stop loving someone who never stopped protecting me, even from afar." Adrian stepped closer again. This time, no hesitation. "No more distance," he said. Layla looked up at him. "No more silence," she replied. Their eyes locked. 2 years of pain. Of separation. Of misunderstanding. All standing in a single moment. Adrian gently reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she held it tighter. Like she was finally allowing herself to believe again. His voice dropped, almost fragile now. "You were never my weakness." A pause. His grip tightened slightly. "You were my reason to live." Layla's breath caught. And for the first time in years. She didn't feel fear when she looked at him. She felt home. Outside, the city continued its endless noise. But inside that room, something finally stopped breaking. And started healing. Layla whispered softly. "Then don't let me go again." Adrian shook his head once. "I won't." And in that promise, 2 broken worlds finally became one. Not perfect. Not safe. But real. And for the first time. That was enough.